Well, Heather, we're back together again. A lot going on and a lot of fun we're going to have. It's good to be with you again.
Good to be with you too. We do. We have a lot of news. There's a lot to talk about today, Joe.
There's a lot to talk about. All right. So, we are going to cover those current events. We have the TV and movie quote of the week, where we're going to talk about what we've been watching and extract some wisdom from that. The excellent thing we learned this week, we're going to try to stump each other with two truths and a lie. Shirley Koss, one of our coaches, is going to feature one of our members who's doing an amazing job in their practice. And Heather's going to pick her favorite Woodard Report article of the week. Now, we have a game that we play over here at the Woodard Podcast Report or Woodard Report Podcast. And Heather or I give each other a word. We've never seen the word before. And we have to figure out how to organically and naturally fold it into the things that we are saying. So the word of the day is cabbage. Heather just gave me the word cabbage. So listen closely, listeners, and see if I can work cabbage into the things I'm saying organically and naturally in today's podcast. All right, let's talk about the current events. All right, Heather, what are you seeing out there?
Well, Intuit has been in the news quite prominently over the last week and a half. And so I have a few things related to Intuit that are very, very newsworthy. The first one I'm going to start with is that Intuit's had quite the stock plunge, Joe. And I know this has been happening over the last 9 months. So the share
Actually,
price.
yes, over the 9 months, there's been a plunge. They're at a 5-year low.
They're at a 5-year low. It has plunged over 60%. So on July 29th, 2025, it was trading at a price of $803, and it hit an all-time low last week of $303 per share. So very crazy. It dropped 20% in that week alone. So pretty crazy stuff. That being said, investors or the analysts are saying that they expect it to rebound, and that's not surprising. They still reported a profit, but what they reported was that tax season was less than what they expected. And that little tidbit prompted a lawsuit. So a lawsuit has been filed. A law firm that's representing the shareholders filed a lawsuit that alleges that Intuit overstated their pricing advantage for the 2026 tax season for TurboTax. And they reported in their Q2 report, they expected it to be really competitive on price. And what they reported in their Q3 report was that they missed the mark and they actually lost on price. So this law firm has started a class action lawsuit on behalf of the shareholders, alleging that there's some fraud going on. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, this is alleged.
Yes, and for context, every time that there is a significant drop in share price, well, not every time, but many times, these lawyers will pile on. They'll try to start up a class action lawsuit. So this is not uncommon that these happen. And but it does feature the fact that Intuit's got some work to do to respond to the new normal. And really all this started with the SaaS apocalypse. If it weren't for that, I think that Intuit's other earnings and the stabilization of their share price based on the QuickBooks product, accounting product lines, Credit Karma, and some other business lines would have absorbed this, and it wouldn't even be a news story.
And honestly, they were still profitable. I mean, they're still profitable.
Exactly.
So, and they're still growing.
A profitable company with a significant data treasure trove, a deep moat on user conversion. There's every reason to believe this is going to rebound. So I'm holding my positions at Intuit with Intuit. I'm not a stock analyst, so please don't take that as stock advice. But personally, I am holding my positions with Intuit, waiting for it to recover.
There's two other big pieces of news from Intuit that I felt were newsworthy. One was they laid off 17% of their workforce last week, which was 3,000 workers. And they were citing that it was AI displacement, that they're, as they implement AI, they're needing fewer people. So that also is not unexpected. It was just a matter of time, I think, before we saw that. And then finally, this is really new. ChatGPT launched ChatGPT Finance this week. And what it does is it allows you to connect your bank account to ChatGPT to ask questions about your financial situation. So that's going to be really interesting, Joe. We announced several months ago that they had a partnership with OpenAI back in the fall. And so it'll be interesting to see how they're going to react to this.
Mhm.
We'll how historically, as soon as a partner starts to compete with them, they tend to back off. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, and they may just see this as something more looking through the finances with a pinhole. I mean, I think I could see somebody saying, how much did I pay AT&T last month, or what were my total communications costs last month? But I don't see a bank statement competing with a general ledger. But if this is just the
So,
beginning of a larger kind of
yes,
play that queries other sources of data, now then we're back into competitive land.
for
Um,
sure.
all right, so for me, the current event is Ted Callahan, long-term head of account at channel at Intuit. I think everybody knows that he announced that he's leaving Intuit, or was leaving Intuit, a couple of months ago. He is now the deputy CTO at Sage. Now, the reason I think this is interesting is, first, I think a lot of our listeners knew Ted and worked with Ted because he was head of account at channel. And I think that it's also interesting because you have someone with an experience as head of account at channel becoming deputy CTO in the C suite realm of another accounting software solution. So if I'm reading the tea leaves here, what Sage is saying is technology and accounting operations are more inseparable than ever. That
Mhm.
they cannot deliver on AI to the market if they do not understand what is in the daily operations and in the mind, in the process, in the work of accountancy. So now they haven't made a statement to that effect. I'm just trying to figure out why someone with an accountant channel background would be deputy CTO. And that's what I'm deducing.
Interesting because looking at his LinkedIn profile, he started at Intuit with the QuickBooks Live product. So he worked through actually was self-employed. He was part of he was led the self-employed team. Then he went to QuickBooks Live, and then he went to the accountant channel. So he has a breadth of knowledge
He
across
does. Yeah.
it.
It goes a little broader. Yeah.
Yeah.
Live and accountant channel were both accountant. Typically
Hmm.
they hire around that most recent expertise.
Right.
I still deduce the same thing. Yeah. They want to know deep in what's happening in accounting firms to design their
100%.
tech around that. That's my theory. We'll see if it plays out.
Right.
All right. Now on to the TV and movie quote of the week. Heather, what have you been watching out there?
So it's not a movie that I've recently watched. I mean, I've watched it in the last year because it's one of my favorite movies. But my son, Jack, it was his birthday this week. And so I was thinking about, we used to call him, he was born in 2004. And we used to call him Jack Jack from The Incredibles, right? Because he really was Jack Jack. He was, I always imagine that
Bouncing off
image
the
of Jack
walls.
Jack
Yeah.
with the ball of fire. And that was my Jack Jack. So that is what my quote is from today. So it's from the scene where Helen Parr is visiting Edna Mode to get the super suits for the Incredibles family, right? And so Edna has made a suit for Jack Jack, and Helen's saying, "Why did you make Jack Jack a suit? He doesn't have any powers." Right? He has no powers. He's not showing any powers. And so not only why did you make him one, like how did you make him one if you don't know what the powers are? And Edna's response was, luck favors the prepared.
Hmm.
And so that really hit home for me, because we need to be prepared. And, right now we are experiencing, I believe, unprecedented change in our industry and in the world with the rapid acceleration of AI. And the only way that we're going to be lucky is to be prepared. And being prepared means staying informed, staying educated, and understanding the technology and its greater impact on not just the accounting space but our world as a whole. So I feel like this really resonated with me because I think that is so important right now.
Well, it's so funny that and I agree completely, by the way. Yes, we have to be prepared. We have to respond, but not react.
Yes.
But a non-response is not a response. That's denial. Absolutely, 100%. It's interesting that both of our quotes just happen to include the word brave in them, not orchestrated, but mine's from Hail Mary. And the quote is, I don't have the bravery gene. This is what the hero of the story says. I don't have the bravery gene. And then in response to that, the person he's speaking with, it's irrelevant for the purpose of the quote. It isn't a gene, she says. You just have to find someone to be brave for. I thought that was extremely powerful. So now, if you combine Heather's quote, my quote, you have to, the luck favors the prepared, right? Which means you go bravely into this AI thing, even though it wasn't expressly mentioned. But you have to have a reason that's bigger than yourself for doing so. It could be your team members that you want to protect through the journey. It could be your clients that you want to protect through the journey. It could be your family that you want to protect through the journey. But if you'll think of a reason to do this beyond yourself, you will find that you tap into more bravery. And then you'll have the courage to do what Heather said and to be more prepared. All right.
I could not agree more, Joe. I think that, I think for all of us, when we think of others, it brings us to a higher level, right? And so it is important to stay focused on that and tap into it. You can find a lot of strength just by thinking about the people that you love and the people that you serve.
Absolutely. It emboldens you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. On to the excellent thing we learned this week. Heather, what have you been reading or listening to out there?
So everyone that knows me well, and you too, listeners, you probably have figured this out if you've been listening to our podcast for a while. I have ADHD.
And really, never noticed.
So yes, I have ADHD. It makes me hyper. I can become very hyper focused, but then it makes it very difficult for me to prioritize and to follow through on tasks. And so I have to work a little bit harder. And all the other neurodivergent folks out there, and I know there's lots of you out there, you know that you have to work a little bit harder than non-neurodivergent people. And so the excellent thing that I learned this week, and I just fell upon it from Copilot, honestly, Joe, was the rule of three. And the rule of three is, rather than writing down every single thing that you have to get done, you write down three important things that you have to get done. And then you do those three important things, and then you reset and you write down the next three. But for neurodivergent ADHD people like me, when I have a big, long list of things to do, I actually get paralysis because I don't know where to start. And it's really difficult for me to function knowing I have all these things on my plate. So just taking at the beginning of the day and going through, what are the three most important things when I'm having my coffee, the three most important things that I need to get done right now, that helps me stay focused on getting things across the finish line. And it's actually made a big difference for me. And I'm not just doing this in work, Joe. I'm doing this in my personal life too, because there's lots of other things I have to do, living on a farm, taking care of my family. And so just identifying those three things has given me a bit of a freedom of being able to focus, and it's freed up my mind because I don't have the distraction of all the other things at the front of my mind. I've kind of pushed
So it's a form of compartmentalization. Yeah.
It is.
And even if you don't have ADHD, which I don't, but I still have to deal with procrastination, I find the same principle works with or without the ADHD. It's just more necessary. It's more essential when you have that extra disability. Or the extra challenge. I don't know that you call it a disability. Some people call it a superpower, but when you have that extra challenge and in focus, and this is important for everyone listening in. Heather used the word paralyzation, and some people do get paralyzed. Some people also rechannel the energy into less important tasks. Yes. So instead of focusing on the three things they're supposed to get done, they focus on the 100 things that are out there. That way they mask the lack of productivity with activity. And procrastination is not necessarily inaction. More frequently, it is the wrong actions.
I love that you said that, Joe, because that's so true. And I find that I struggle with that myself. And some people do the hard thing first because that gives them the freedom. I think that's a really smart approach. Other folks wait until their prime time. Everyone has a prime time where they work at their best, and they'll do that thing during the prime time. But I love that. And the thing that I want to add to that is, if you're one of those people that are working on the wrong things, you're not a bad person. You're not somebody that's flawed. And this is something
You're
that you
actually
can
quite
work on.
normal. You're quite
Exactly.
normal. The
So,
majority of the human race does that. They
yeah.
work on the wrong thing. They tend to gravitate toward what is fun, easy, and predictable. It could be
And
any
that's
of them, fun,
right.
easy, or predictable, and stay really busy doing that. And then they're at the end of their day and they're like, well, I have worked very hard today. I'll do those three things that were so important. I'll do them tomorrow. It doesn't, yeah, that's why you're procrastinating.
And I think it's important to drive home, Joe, that they're not flawed.
No,
It's
it's
But
not a
they
flaw.
do have to find, if they want to become more productive, there's workarounds and there's things that you can do. But it's
Absolutely right.
totally, it I think that's with ADHD comes a lot of guilt. Having been ADHD my entire life, Joe, we could do a whole episode, and I'm going to be
Sure.
quiet in a minute. But for all of you out there, you know what I'm talking about, that we struggle with the guilt of, how come I can't get these things across the finish line? Why does it take me so much longer than other people? Why is it so much harder for me to focus? And it's just the way our brains are wired. The good news is that you can find tools to help
Yes.
you through that.
Tools and also see your doctor,
Yes,
medications, right?
absolutely.
And my daughter has been diagnosed with ADHD, so I'm very much familiar with that journey.
Yeah.
And then her being a student in NYU, it's taken on a whole new level of challenges for her. She's navigating. So I
Yes.
absolutely understand. So my thing that I learned this week is a concept called not us thinking. Now, this is by Richard Susskind, who's the father of our keynote speaker coming up here at Scaling New Heights, Daniel Susskind. They both have researched technology trends and artificial intelligence for decades. Richard Susskind was writing about artificial intelligence in the 1980s. This recent book that he came out with is focused on how you should respond to AI. It's much higher level than some of the other books that are out there. If you need a primer on what to do and you're now starting to get serious, I would start with Richard Suskind's book. There'll be a link in our listener guide. In the book, though, he says, based on his and his son's extensive research, and I can't stress enough, it's extensive collegiate level research by a lawyer and an economist who are experts in the professions, serial publisher, serial authors, um, and nationally renowned and globally renowned speakers. So this is not a fluffy book. It is research based. And Richard Suskind's conclusion is all the professions suffer to some degree from not us syndrome, right? And the way it works, you believe that artificial intelligence is going to make significant changes in everybody but yourself. Accountants will think, oh, yeah, law is going to become so much more streamlined. People are going to spend a lot less money on lawyers. Yet medical research is going to become so much more effective, and we're going to maybe even find a cure for cancer. We can see great things in artificial intelligence, but then we think it can't do a bank rec as good as we can. That's called not us thinking. And it's rooted in a false position of safety. The false position of safety is in process. I hear this argument all the time out on social media. I've heard it with people telling me face to face that they'll say Intuit or Zero or whoever has the latest AI widget of the day, Basis or whatever. They say there's no way it could have done the bank rec I just did. And then they start explaining what they had to go through in order to do that bank rec, step by step, deduction by deduction, logic by logic, and they presume it can never be done by an artificial brain. But if that is you, and that is where you are placing all of your safety and your future hopes, you really need to hear what I'm saying. Two things I'm going to say. One, artificial intelligence can do not just the cyclical, repeatable, and predictable. Artificial intelligence has now evolved to the point where if a human brain can explain how they did it, artificial intelligence can do it. Right. So even if it didn't know how to do it before, because the moment you explain how you did it, you've taught it. All right. Number two, it will find different ways of doing the work. Those ways of doing the work could be so incredibly inefficient that we would never imagine trying to do it that way. For example, it may decide that it wants to reconcile a bank statement in a way that would take a human 6 months at 40 hours a week. But it's going to choose that path because it found a route on that path to where it needed to go with 100% certainty. And it will do what it would have taken a human 6 months at 40 hours a week to do. And it will do that in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and increasingly 2 minutes. So just because it's incredibly inefficient doesn't mean it's not blazingly fast. Do not find comfort in your process. Do not find false hope in your process. AI will displace that process. What it will not displace is wisdom, many areas of judgment, emotion, relationships. You need to tap more than ever into the human side of your work. And we're going to be focusing on all of this very heavily at Scaling New Heights. Heather, thoughts?
No, I agree with you 100%. It's staggering. And for those that are, haven't really dipped into AI, or maybe you played with it a little bit, it has come so far, and it is accelerating at a pace that I've
Exponential
never
pace.
seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, exponential pace.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Crazy.
Daniel Susskind just recently said in a lecture that collectively the economies of this world are spending more in artificial intelligence than they did in the space race adjusted for inflation.
Wow.
So we as a human race, good or bad, we can debate good or bad, are, we're really bent. I was going to say the H word, bent on developing this thing. And so whether you agree with that course of action or not, there's no regulation that will stop it. There's no geopolitical force that will stop it. As a matter of fact, the geopolitical situation is accelerating it. It is coming. Now we just have to decide what we're going to do to live in an AI world. All right. So with that sobering note, let's move on to a lighter topic, 2 truths and a lie. All right, Heather, try to stump me out there.
I don't think I'm going to stump you today, Joe. And the reason I don't think I'm going to stump you is because my 2 truths and a lie are about Orlando, Florida. And I know that you and your family are major Disney phobes, or not phobes. That means you're scared of it. But you're Disney files, is that the word? Did you get that right?
Disney files.
Yes, your Disney files. So you're probably going to get this, but it was, when I did my research, it was new to me. So number 1, Orlando, Florida was originally named Jernigan. Thing 2 is Walt Disney World was Orlando's first theme park. And thing 3 is the Orlando Magic could have been named the Orlando Heat, the Orlando Tropics, or the Orlando Juice.
Well, anything could have been named anything. So I could have been named Fred. So,
all right.
So that one's got to be true because anything could have been named anything. I mean, lettuce could have been named cabbage. I mean, we just chose those words, right? So that one's got to be true. Then let's say I'm going to go with Jernigan. Probably sounds like something that could have happened. So I'm going to say Walt Disney World was not Orlando's first theme park.
You ding, ding, ding. You got it, Joe. So it was Gatorland. It was Gatorland.
I think Gatorland's still there, isn't it?
Yeah, Gatorland's still there. It was opened 20 years before Walt Disney World. Yeah. So you got it right. Congratulations.
That's awesome. All right. And you gave me a soft lob on that whole cabbage lettuce thing.
I so did. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So here are mine. And mine are all based around the origin. Etymology is a fun little thing for me. I love it. The origin of business words. All right, so let's start with the word deadline. First, deadline originated in Civil War prison camps. It was a line drawn around the perimeter, and prisoners who crossed it were shot. All right. Then overtime. Overtime was coined by railroad companies in the 1880s who needed a specific term for hours worked beyond a scheduled shift. And then finally, fired. Fired comes from the practice of burning down the house or hut of a disloyal Scottish clan member, leaving them with nothing. So we have deadline, overtime, or fired. Which one of these origins is incorrect?
Wow. Okay. If I get this right, Joe, I'm just going to say it now that it is completely luck. Um, so I don't have any basis in knowledge of this. So I'm going to try and go through it with logic. So deadline originated in the Civil War as being the perimeter. That makes a lot of sense. Deadline makes sense. However, how we use it, that doesn't make sense. So a deadline has to do with completing something. So I don't know. That one I think could be the lie. So I'm going to set that aside as that could be the lie. Although it does make sense, but just the way that we use it doesn't like add up. Overtime was coined by railroad companies in the 1880s who needed a specific term for hours worked beyond a scheduled shift. I don't think that's true. I think that's actually the lie. And the reason is that labor laws didn't come into existence until I think the early 1900s. So I'm pretty sure that the labor parties started to push back against the railroad companies, but I think that the date might be wrong. I think that might be wrong. And then fired coming from the practice of burning down the house or hut of a disloyal. That sounds reasonable to me. The alternative that I was trying to think of, like what other fired things it could be, like if somebody, you could fire at them with a gun. So
Firing
I like
squad.
your version better, or whatever you put better, I guess. I don't know. Burning down the house isn't very good either. But then there's also that song, "Burning Down the House,"
Mhm. All right, you got to
which
pick
could
one.
be also from that. So I'm going to say that's true. And I'm going to go with thing two. I think thing two is not true.
Yeah, thing two is not true. And that was a really good way that you discern that. Yeah, it was actually from the factory workers that the labor unions formed. And so whether overtime was actually ever applied to the railroad industry or not, I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that its origin story was within the factories of the industrial age. So deadline is definitely hyperbolic. We don't shoot people who miss deadlines, but we
Mm-mm.
do fire them, which is also hyperbolic. Also because we don't burn their houses down either. So interesting how strong these words are, though, that they would incorporate their way into business. It must be a really serious thing to miss a deadline and be fired.
Yeah.
All right. On to the member spotlight. All right. Shirley Koss is with us, one of our coaches, and she is going to tell us all about a member in our community that's doing great things in their practice. Shirley, who are we talking about today?
So today we are sharing Michael McClellan's journey, and his journey really proves that it's never too late to reinvent, refocus, and reignite a business. He came to Woodard with about 25 years of experience in the industry, and his practice spans from the heart of Texas, where he is now, to the wilds of Alaska, where he grew up, and he is the owner of Aurora Bookkeeping and Consulting. And Michael's been a part of the Woodard community since Scaling New Heights 2018. And his story really is one of transformation, perseverance, and the power of saying yes to growth. To be in business that long, 25 years, and then still to say, I'm not where I want to be yet fully. I still feel like there's things I can do to get to my goal. I think really speaks volumes about his character. And he's just someone who
He's an innovator.
he really
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah, well,
he
tell what's some of the latest stuff he's been up to with those innovations.
So he works primarily with folks in hospitality service-based industry and really wants them to understand their numbers and make better decisions. And so that's really what he's working on doing, is helping them focus on running their businesses more effectively and really being that advisor. And he serves currently, I think he's got about 5 to 10 clients. He's open to taking on a few more, but he really works on the relationship. And that's kind of the innovation and ties into our discussions even about AI, right? Is that as much as we have the technology, et cetera, he is leveraging that. But he's also really working on process improvement with his clients and really working on their relationships and how he can better serve them as their businesses evolve.
Well, you're talking 5 to 6 clients, and that's a practice. That says something in and of itself.
I
Mhm,
agree,
mhm.
Yeah, I
Joe.
mean, that means that you have meaningful relationships with those 5 or 6 clients. You've got a price point that can support you with 5 or 6 clients, and then with the fact that you don't have 50 clients to produce the same amount of revenue, you can give them so much attention.
Yes.
So I've always said that if we could lower the number of clients per $1 million of revenue, and AI is going to drive that. And then if we can, increase the amount of earnings per professional, which in his case, I believe he's still sole practitioner at those 5 or 6.
Mhm.
But if he could get the amount of his actual, revenues up by member, you push both of those at the same time, and AI can drive both of those. You're going to be in a fantastic spot.
Yes, absolutely. And he also has a background as a controller too, Joe. So he's throwing that into the mix as well. He also has a few advanced certifications. And so he pulls that all together as his business coaching perspective. So he's combining the technical knowledge that you spoke of, the AI, practical business insight, and then just his genuine interest and care for his clients and getting involved in what makes their business as an individual almost curated, personalized, customized plan to help them grow and reach their goals, and really
and
helping them
and and,
turn.
and the controller part of it was what was so interesting there, because that's something easy to communicate to the business owner. They understand what a controller is. Then you
Mhm,
can broaden their understanding by saying, okay, now that you know the concept, let me tell you what a controller would do if you hired one in your business, which they can't afford to do. It'd be over medication. And then they understand the need. And ultimately, a controller protects the client's journey. That's what my controller does here at Woodard: regulatory compliance, managerial compliance, risk mitigation, 3 legs of it. And if he's leading out with that, and when you say he has controller experience, do you mean in the private sector too, or just with his clients?
both.
See, that's huge.
Yes.
I tell CPA firms, if you want CAS professionals, go into private industry and find these people that are holding back offices together by sheer will, and hire them right out of industry. They're rock stars.
What I love about Michael McClellan is that he leans into his practice. He leans into the community. I probably met him in 2018, and he's been at every Scaling New Heights since. But he's also been a very important uh, part of our Woodard community. He's always the one to raise his hand to help other members. He's always there to, dig in, always learning, showing up for webinars, showing up for fireside chats, really leaning into the industry. And he is a leader in our profession at this point.
Yeah.
He's doing great. He's actually leading a walking tour at Scaling New Heights this year, and this is the second year that he's done that. So we're very
On top of
grateful
that,
to
one
have
of the
him.
nicest people in the world. So,
He
Yeah,
really is. Really
absolutely.
grateful to have him.
yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
he's
Well, Shirley,
fantastic.
thank you so much for sharing Michael's journey with us today. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, Heather, on to the final segment. What was your favorite Woodard Report article of the week?
Joe, as it happens quite frequently, my favorite article is actually part of a 4-part series that was written by Dan DeLong. So Dan DeLong, in case you don't know who Dan DeLong is, he is one of the co-hosts of the QuickBooks Power Hour. But he also was a 17-year veteran of Intuit's premium or premier customer support. And he's super duper knowledgeable about all things Intuit. So his article is about, it's called Lock It Down, Write It Down, Intuit Security for Firms. And there's 4 different articles that you could read that talk about how to protect your Intuit login, how they work. So the Intuit login across all the Intuit products is a little bit complicated and people have had some issues with it. So he breaks down what it is, how to use it, how to adapt to it with the changes in the Intuit Accountant Suite and Intuit Enterprise Suite. And then he talks about practicalities and best practices for keeping that information safe. And he's going to be presenting at Scaling New Heights with Carrie Kahn, a session called QuickBooks 2026 and AI, Staying Current, Staying Secure, Stay Ahead. So
I love
if
it.
you are attending, that's going to be really great. It's on Wednesday at 2:10 p.m. Eastern time in Orlando. So definitely check out the articles. If you're not, able to attend Scaling New Heights, check them out even if you are, but then make sure you check out their session on Wednesday.
Awesome. All right. Well, that does wrap up another episode of the Woodard Report. Remember that you can find out more information about everything we talked about here in this episode in our listener guide at woodardreport.com.